Representative Ilahn Omar is proposing legislation that would place new restrictions on what are called no-knock warrants, which have made sort of national news multiple times in the last few years. Most recently with Amir Locke, who was an individual who, thanks to the release of body cam video by Minneapolis police, we know was woken up in the middle of the night by SWAT officers bursting into his apartment. He was in bed, covered by a comforter. The cops say he was holding a gun. You can sort of see it in the video, and they immediately shot him and he eventually died. The entire thing from kicking in the door to killing him took just a few seconds. And this is not the first time this has happened. So this Representative Omar is trying to put new restrictions in the process. Let's go into a little bit of video of her explain the legislation.
Legislation is to restrict and ban no-knock warrants. We are actually engaging in a process to try to have a conversation with the judiciary committees, both in the House and the Senate, talk to legal experts, to try to make sure that we have legislation that can be pre-negotiated so that it does have the chance of passing and saving lives. A lot of people already think the no-knock warrants and rates are unconstitutional. They not only lead to property damage, trauma, but often are deadly and take lives. There is a big effort by a lot of people in Congress that have tried to work on policy in this regard. And I think that we have an opportunity to have these conversations and introduce legislation that will ultimately guarantee no lives are taken and no judges are issuing these no-knock warrants.
Yeah. By the way, I want to clarify, I was speaking colloquially. I mean, going in quickly. They did not literally kick down the door. They had been provided a key. So just for clarity, thank you to the audience for checking the language there. In any event, Jordan, what do you think about the prospects for this sort of legislation? Are they gonna get 10 Senate Republicans on board to not have this thing be instantaneously filibustered?
I doubt it. I really don't think this will happen. I hope it does because I think it's essential. The idea that police can just walk into your apartment armed and in a split second, to go back to the story we talked about earlier, decide whether or not they can kill you, even if you despite you having a legally owned firearm. That's a horrifying state of America. I have talked about this sparingly because I obviously don't want to, inspire copycats. But several years ago, I was swatted, and I woke up to several armed cops at my door. And I still wake up like a couple times a week, like every week since then. I wake up thinking it's happening again. And the fact that people don't care or don't recognize that this is happening all over the place, and in many cases leading to the death of innocent people, is horrifying. Because I can tell you from experience, it's traumatizing. It's extremely unsettling when you have people with guns suddenly. Thankfully, they didn't open my door.
Yeah.
But I opened the door and they're all there with guns, and it was terrifying. And that this in some cases leads to death, and then entering your apartment while you're asleep and killing you is terrifying.
I can't even imagine. I'm sorry that you had to go through that and that you're still being affected by it. Absolutely devastating. And it's the sort of thing where, like, reforming this, obviously, Democrats, based on what they claim they believe, should be against this. That should be obvious. But like, think about Republicans. Like, they love to pretend that like their house is their castle, and how dare the government send in people. They pretend that they're against this. This was a gun owner who was gunned down effectively while sleeping instantly by cops. And he was innocent. He shouldn't have been affected in any way by this investigation. Like, if conservatives meant anything that they say they mean, or that what they say they mean isn't totally contingent on the race of the people being affected by it, this should have been talked about on Fox News by literally weeks. Think about how much the Second Amendment worshipers out there would have loved. We've got to change this. We got to make sure that people have the right to have a gun. Just because you hold a gun doesn't mean that the cops get to shoot you. The issue is that generally the sorts of people being affected by this, whether just the no-knock warrant or deadly consequences from it, is not evenly distributed racially across demographics. You can see here from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety information about the race of people that have been reported as subjects of no-knock warrants. Again, it is predominantly there, Black people being affected by this. And the thing is, like, they're obviously never going, like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham are not going to do segments about, normally we would be against no-knock warrants, but we've looked at the numbers and it doesn't affect white people, so we're fine. But you can see from their silence that they seem to understand that this isn't gonna affect their sorts of people. Certainly not enough for them to care about it. Anyway, Jordan, it's the sort of thing the legislation that should pass in a minute, but with the system that we have right now, I'm glad that she's doing it, but I don't see how it gets passed.
Yeah, this is another reminder of why we need more people who are true progressives in Congress, because that actually reflects, the general thoughts and sentiments of the American people. Like I said earlier, 90% of people support some sort of reforms for the police. This isn't defunding the police. This isn't abolishing the police. This is a pretty reasonable ask, but politicians, again, across both sides of the aisle, govern from fear, and they would be worried about losing, FOP endorsements or being attacked as soft on crime or whatever, primaried. This is simple. This is something that Democrats across the board should champion, especially after they glommed onto George Floyd's murder for, PR purposes. This is a very little easy thing you can do to create just one small step in the right direction. It's simple. They should do it, but I doubt they will.
Yeah, and look, if we had a reasonable democracy, it would be one part of a comprehensive bill reforming a number of these different practices. But even just this little thing, maybe in a couple cities, maybe it could happen. I mean, supposedly in this area, there were supposed to be more prohibitions against using it. We can see how effective those have been.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.